This is Seattle's Morning News. Loren Culp, the police chief in Republic, Washington, has earned the right to go up against incumbent Governor Jay Inslee and prevent him from getting a third term. I got to ask you, Chief Culp, did you think you would make it this far?
Absolutely. Yes. When I decided to throw my hat in the ring and run, I planned on winning. Otherwise, I wouldn't have jumped in the race.
Now, this began with your stand on Gun Initiative 1639. That's what made you famous. And when you took your stand on that you were not going to enforce the part of that bill that restricted the sale of long guns, were you expecting the reaction that you got?
I was not. No, I was just standing up for citizens' rights like I took an oath of office to do. You know, everybody knows what the Second Amendment is, but the Washington State Constitution is even more explicit in Article 1, Section 24. It says that the right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. So when I took that stand, I was just doing it for the people that I serve. And I did not expect the reaction that I got. You know, I didn't expect to be on the national news because of it. But that's what led me to running for governor, because I ended up writing a book explaining citizens' rights and the responsibilities of elected public servants to follow their oath of office. In December of 2018, I wrote American Cop, and it went to #1, which led me to going around the state, being invited to Republican Party Lincoln Day dinners and sportsman shows, speaking about citizens' rights. And that's what led to people starting to ask me to run for governor. And in July of 2019, I took it seriously and looked around and didn't see anybody else that I could trust to stand up for citizens' rights the way that I did, so I threw my hat in the ring.
So do you assert the right to enforce only those laws that you consider to be constitutional?
No, I have the responsibility to uphold and defend the Constitution of the state of Washington and the Constitution of the United States. That's what all public servants take an oath to do. And so that's the supreme law of the land. It says that right in the Constitution, that it is the supreme law of the land. And so anything that goes against that one simple sentence in Article 1, Section 24, which I already quoted, would be a violation of citizens' rights.
Are there other laws that you've taken this stand on which were passed and which you as the police chief officially should enforce, but you decided not to?
No, there's not. And I've only been a police chief for 4 years. You know, before that, I ran my own business for over 20 years in the Olympia area. And then prior to that, I was in the military. I was a sergeant in the U.S. Army. So I've taken this oath more than one time. Mm-hmm. I took it in the military. I took it when I became a police officer 10 years ago, and I took it when I was promoted to chief of police. And this is the first law that's been enacted that basically just flew right in the face of the Washington mm-hmm. State Constitution.
But here's the thing I wanted to ask you, because last week we were talking about this idea of defunding the police, and I went on the air and I guessed that you would probably not be in favor of defunding the police. And one listener was very upset, saying, you've never talked to Loren Culp about that, so don't say things that you haven't talked to him about. So now that I've got you, let me ask you, do you believe in this idea of defunding the police?
Well, that's pretty much the stupidest thing I've heard lately, is defunding the police. Who are you going to call when someone's breaking into your home? Who are you going to call when someone's being assaulted or killed or raped? You know, a counselor? It doesn't make any sense to defund the police. No, there's a small group of radical leftists that Jay Inslee supports that want to defund the police, and that's not what needs to happen. Our police officers go to work every single day, every single night, all year long, and they protect the communities that they live in and they love. And they protect good people and they put bad people in jail. And so a radical group of leftists want to scream and holler about defunding the police, and spineless politicians give into that. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Did you support the Department of Justice's investigation into the use of force by the Seattle police and some of the changes that were made?
Anytime there's a claim that the police are using excessive force, then it should be investigated. Mm-hmm. And for anyone to say that the police are racist in Seattle, then I guess I would ask them to talk to Chief Best, because I don't believe that Chief Best would put up with racism. I don't believe she's a racist. So for the claims that the Seattle police are racist is absolutely ridiculous. You know, whenever one does pop up or one commits a crime, a police officer I'm talking about, then good police officers arrest them and put them in jail. That's what happened with the death of Mr. Floyd, and that's what happens every time. So to say that the Seattle Police Department is racist, I think is ridiculous.
And just to be clear, you have spoken out pretty strongly about the George Floyd case, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I have. Also talk about David Dorn, someone who most people have never heard of. David Dorn was a 77-year-old retired black man that lived in St. Louis, and when the riots started there, he tried to protect the storefront. And they live streamed shooting him in the back and watching him bleed out on the sidewalk on Twitter. And that was a black man that was shot down during riots and didn't even make the news.
I certainly have not heard as much about David Dorn as George Floyd. I'm betting that most people didn't either. Why do you think it is?
Because it doesn't fit the radical left's narrative. Because David Dorn was a retired police officer. So according to the radical left, his life didn't matter.
Do you think the radical left controls the Democratic Party now?
Absolutely. All you have to do is look at AOC and who they were running for president, for crying out loud. If they're not radical left, I don't know who is.
Joe Biden is radical left?
Absolutely. Look who he chose as his vice president running mate.
She's a prosecutor. She put people in jail.
Yeah, for marijuana crimes. And then jokes about smoking marijuana.
Okay.
Herself.
But that doesn't sound like, for that very reason, she doesn't sound like a radical leftist. I mean, if she was radical, wouldn't she say, hey, cool, let's smoke together?
Yeah, well, I'm not running for president, so I haven't dug into a lot of that
fair
she's
enough.
done.
And we'll get to statewide issues tomorrow with more of our conversation with Republican candidate for governor Loren Culp. By the way, on the shooting of retired St. Louis Police Captain David Dorn, which Loren Culp referred to, that took place back on June 2nd. And the following week, they arrested a 24-year-old man for committing that crime, and he's in jail and will go to trial.